When Emily, a student at a high school in New York, saw her friend Madison after a short break, she was taken aback. Madison, who was usually overlooked due to her plain appearance, had transformed into a stunning beauty. The only recognizable feature was a birthmark on her left cheek. Madison's transformation caused a stir at school. She was suddenly popular and surrounded by admirers. She claimed that her new look was the result of self-care, but Emily was skeptical. Madison's transformation was so drastic that it seemed impossible to have occurred over a one-week holiday. In the following weeks, Madison distanced herself from Emily and integrated herself into the popular crowd. She started engaging in activities she once criticized, such as public displays of affection and partying. Despite her new lifestyle, she managed to maintain good grades, which raised suspicions about how she achieved them. One week, Emily's mother invited Madison and her mother for dinner. Madison's mother, always concerned about appearances, was thrilled with her daughter's transformation and didn't hesitate to show off her beautiful daughter. After dinner, the mothers left Emily and Madison alone. Madison, however, seemed more interested in her phone than catching up with Emily. Emily confronted Madison about her behavior, accusing her of abandoning their friendship for popularity. Madison retorted harshly, accusing Emily of jealousy and admitting that she was tired of being unpopular. The confrontation ended with Madison promising to make it up to Emily. The next day, Madison sent Emily a cryptic text message inviting her over to her house. When Emily arrived, she found Madison in a horrifying state. A creature was emerging from Madison's mouth, causing her to convulse violently before going limp. Emily blacked out from the shock. When Emily woke up, she found herself face to face with a monstrous creature. Terrified, she ran home. When she woke up the next day and looked in the mirror, she was shocked to find that she had become beautiful, just like Madison. In the midst of the 2021 pandemic, John, a resident of a suburban neighborhood in Middle America, was drawn to the concept of $1 homes in Europe, particularly Italy. These were centuries-old buildings, sold for $1 with the condition that the buyer would renovate and reside there part of the year. John, seeking a change in his life, decided to take the plunge. He found himself in a small village in southern Italy, where he purchased a 2-story stone building. Despite its crumbling facade and soft mortar, the building stood firm. John felt a sense of pride as he turned the key to his new home, ready to breathe new life into it. However, the process was not as straightforward as he had hoped. The Italian bureaucracy was challenging, and obtaining a construction permit was an additional hurdle. After a week in a hotel, John finally moved into his new home. It was in a livable condition, requiring only cleaning, painting, plumbing, and electrical upgrades. It seemed like a dream come true, but the dream soon turned into a nightmare. On his first night in the house, John experienced a strange pressure on his chest and belly, as if he were being squeezed in a vice. He dismissed it as anxiety and spent the next day cleaning the house. The following night, the pressure returned, this time more intense. He woke up gasping for air, his chest feeling as if it were collapsing. He noticed that he had aged about 10 years overnight. His beard had grayed, and wrinkles had appeared under his eyes. The source of his terror was in the cellar. A box bed, an old medieval enclosed bed, was banging loudly. Inside it was a skeletal figure, its skin taut and black. It slammed its emaciated hand against the wooden panel wall of the box bed and demanded more in a deathly voice. John fled the house and ran until morning. He noticed the villagers, all elderly, watching him from the shadows. Their faces were taut and wretched, their skin folded deeply around their necks. They seemed ancient. John managed to escape the village and return to America. He noticed that he had aged significantly, a change also observed by those who knew him. He realized that his years had been stolen from him in that small Italian village, possibly by villagers who might be hundreds of years old. For the past 3 decades, I've been attending therapy sessions in the bustling city of New York. My therapist believes that sharing personal experiences can be therapeutic, helping to process and validate emotions. I was raised in a traditional household in the heartland of Kansas. We were devout churchgoers, with no room for fantastical beliefs like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. My life was simple and grounded in reality. In the late 80s, I married my husband, a dairy farmer from Wisconsin. We met on a blind date arranged by mutual friends. I had aspirations of becoming a teacher, but life had other plans. I became a farmer's wife, spending my days cooking, doing chores, and homemaking. In 1989, our daughter Emily was born. She was the center of my universe, and I cherished being her mother. However, our peaceful life took a turn when Emily turned 5. We began noticing strange lights penetrating our windows at night. Despite our efforts, we couldn't find the source. Then, Emily's kindergarten teacher expressed concern about her disturbing drawings. Emily consistently drew herself next to tall, skinny figures with red eyes. She referred to them as helpers. Emily was diagnosed with leukemia shortly after her 8th birthday. Despite our best efforts and medical care, her condition worsened. One night, I woke up to a bright light and a low hum throughout the house. In Emily's room, I saw 2 tall, dark figures standing over her. In a panic, my husband shot at one of the figures, causing a loud noise and a greenish liquid to spew from it. A month later, we lost Emily to cancer. The loss was too much for us, and we divorced a year later. It was only years later that I realized that the helpers Emily spoke of might have been there to cure her cancer. Now, I live with the regret of acting out of fear and not listening to my daughter. The bridge, a quarter-mile of elegant white stone, spanned a gentle valley in the heart of Texas. Its origin and purpose were unknown, as it crossed no rivers or ravines, just a pleasant grassland. No roads led to the bridge. It simply existed. On August 10th, 2007, I, a security guard named John, began my shift in a small cabin at the western end of the bridge. My job was to observe and record, a task I had performed uneventfully for 11 years. That day, under the scorching Texan sun, I noticed a figure stumbling along the bridge. Shocked, I rushed out of my cabin to the western entrance of the bridge. The figure, a woman in her 50s wearing a gray jumpsuit, had collapsed halfway across. She was lifeless, with a small bloody hole in her chest. Driven by curiosity and concern, I crossed the halfway point of the bridge, something I was contractually forbidden to do. Suddenly, the familiar white stone bridge transformed into a harsh iron gantry stretching over a bottomless void. The eastern cabin was replaced by a concrete bunker with figures outside. Overwhelmed, I retreated, finding myself back on the familiar white stone bridge. Despite my fear, curiosity compelled me to cross the halfway point again. As I did, I found myself back on the iron gantry, face to face with a man in a hazmat suit who looked at me in disbelief and asked, "How?" When I was around 8, my family and I lived in a large house in the suburbs of Chicago. The house was occupied by me, my parents, and my 2 younger siblings. Each of our spacious rooms had a small door leading to an attic crawl space, which we used as a play area and storage for our toys. However, a month after moving in, I began hearing unsettling voices emanating from the attic door every night. The first time it happened, I was intrigued. It was around 1 a.m., and after hearing the voices followed by 3 knocks, I got out of bed and opened the door, expecting to find my little brother wanting to play. But there was nothing on the other side. A chill ran through me, and I quickly closed the door and jumped back into bed. Later that night, 4 a.m., my bedroom door opened, and my little brother came in, asking if he could sleep with me because he had a bad dream. I agreed and let him into my bed. However, just 5 minutes later, I heard my little brother's voice again. I woke up immediately to find every door in my room wide open. My closet, the attic door, and my bedroom door. My brother was standing at my bedroom door, looking terrified, and said he had a bad dream. Confused, I asked, "Didn't you just come into my room?" He shook his head, and I was overcome with fear. I grabbed my brother and ran downstairs to my parents' room, crying about my experience. My mom didn't believe me and sent me back upstairs. When I opened my door, everything was closed again. 3 nights later, around the same time, I heard the voices again, but this time they were deeper and much louder. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread as the attic door started to open on its own. In the doorway, I saw a figure slowly crawl out and then stand upright in my room. I knew it wasn't sleep paralysis because I was able to run out screaming. After that night, I never slept in that room again, and we moved a month later due to my dad's job. In my childhood, I was fortunate to live in a vast house in rural Montana with my liberal parents who allowed me the freedom to explore. They trusted me to stay out of trouble, which I mostly did, except for one incident involving my best friend, Jake. Jake, who was a year older than me, lived next door, and we were inseparable during the summer. He was like an older brother to me, always looking out for me during our adventures. He was fearless, except for the last day I saw him. One day in July, we decided to hike to a magnificent pine tree that we loved in the wilderness. This tree was perfect for climbing and provided ample shade, making it an ideal spot for us to hang out. discussing video games and comic books. As we neared the tree after a 2-mile walk, I felt an unusual sense of unease. We had made this journey and climbed this tree countless times before, but today felt different. As we climbed the tree, I heard indistinct voices coming from below, but when I looked down, there was nothing there. We settled onto a large branch, perfect for sitting, and Jake unzipped our backpack to share out our sandwiches. Suddenly, a man's voice came from below us, saying, "Hi." We were startled, having never encountered anyone else in this remote area. Jake responded with a cautious, "Hi," while I stared down at the man, who was grinning broadly at us. The man asked us to come down to see something cool he had. Jake politely declined, but the man insisted, revealing a large butcher's knife and calling Jake baby. This alarmed us, and I could see fear in Jake's eyes for the first time. Jake looked at me, clearly scared and unsure of what to do. Summoning courage I didn't know I had, I told the man that his knife was cool. The man asked me to come down, and his smile returned. Jake, protective as always, insisted that I wasn't coming down and that we had to leave soon. The man's smile vanished, and he urged Jake to come down quickly. Jake looked at me, tears welling up in his eyes, and whispered, "I'll be right back." I watched in horror as Jake descended the tree, and the man led him away. That was the last time I saw Jake. After they disappeared from my view, I was left alone in the tree, feeling as if nothing had happened, but the silence was deafening. And after what felt like hours, I realized they weren't coming back. I ran home as fast as I could and told my mom what had happened. The subsequent search for Jake turned up nothing. No trace of him was ever found. It's been many years, and I think about Jake almost every day. The uncertainty of what happened to him has cast a shadow over my life. The only solace I find is in reminding myself that Jake was protecting me that day. He knew what was going to happen, but he made sure it didn't happen to me. His bravery and sacrifice are something I will never take for granted.